I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is LBC 97.3, London's biggest conversation. I want to take you back to this morning when I was having the biggest conversation in my house. I have the radio on in the morning, listen to LBC 97.3, Nick Ferrari at breakfast, obviously. But every now and then I want to see what's going on the news in terms of the TV. I put on a bit of Sky News while we're getting ready to go out. And it had Mitt Romney, the Republican presidential candidate, alongside Paul Ryan, the vice presidential candidate for the Republicans, featuring clips of Clint Eastwood and basically just talking about how he was, bidding to be the next president of America. And my 5-year-old, who takes an alarming interest in politics, Paul thing, asked me if he was a nice man. She seems to think I know everybody who's on television. And I said, well, I don't know. I'd never met him. I said, but I don't want him to be the next president of America. And she said, why? I was a bit flummoxed. And I thought maybe you could help me. Just a couple of moments, just if you could take your time. And if you could help me with this, I want you to explain, or tell me how to explain to my 5-year-old why Mitt Romney should not be the next leader of the free world. Because another country's election might not make a massive difference to us most of the time, but when it's America, it makes a huge difference to us in Britain and indeed to the rest of the world. I'm delighted to be welcoming Rob Carolina now, who's chair of the Democrats Abroad UK. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, I put the question to you. You seem to be the obvious person to ask. Can you explain to my 5-year-old why this man should not be the next leader of the free world?
Well, first I have to congratulate you on having such a precocious and insightful 5-year-old. I have to admit that the question really floored me a little bit as well. I thought, how do you explain something like this to a 5-year-old? But I guess I would start with this, and that is the reason that I don't want Mitt Romney to be president is in part because he didn't really listen to his daddy. And you see, Mitt Romney's daddy, his father, was a very nice man. I didn't always agree with what he said, but Mitt Romney's father spent most of his life trying to help other people. He was a man from Michigan who helped people to find jobs. He helped to create hundreds of thousands of jobs in the automobile industry, and he wanted to help people. Now, Mitt Romney hasn't followed that example. He has spent most of his career trying to make life better for Mitt Romney. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it's the way he's done it. You see, Mr. Romney has made his life better by creating misery for other people. He made a lot of his money in his career by causing people to lose their jobs. And I'd start with that. Mitt Romney's father was a very nice man, and I didn't always agree with him, but appreciated him. But Mr. Romney Jr. just really hasn't followed that path.
I like that. I like that. The only thing I could come up with was talking about his idea to repeal Barack Obama's health care plan, Obamacare, and also he's backed obviously Paul Ryan's ideas on Medicare, which is their health care plan for the elderly people, changing it to a private health insurance scheme. And on both these things, I tried to explain to my daughter how when she was poorly, we go to the hospital, we don't have to pay because everyone in our country pays taxes to make sure we've got the NHS and it's something we celebrated here, of course, during the opening ceremony of the Olympics. This is one of the great creations of the 20th century. And I said, it's just this man doesn't think that everybody should be able to get healthcare, even though whether they can afford it or not afford it. And I said, I would never want to be able to not be able to take you to hospital because I didn't have enough money if you were poorly. And she seemed to understand that. But what about issues like same-sex marriage? Abortion, perhaps not an issue one could discuss with a 5-year-old. He certainly would ban abortion. But what about issues like the moral issues, which seem to play so heavily in presidential elections in America in a way that they just don't play here?
Well, it's really kind of hard to answer the question about moral issues where Mitt Romney is concerned. But if we're talking about morality, I think the moral that I would start with is the question of hypocrisy. Now, I know that having a discussion about hypocrisy with a 5-year-old can be very, very challenging. But I think we have to start there. I mean, you mentioned the problem with trying to reduce Medicare or trying to reverse the recent advances in health care in the U.S. Well, the funny thing is that once upon a time, Mitt Romney said that he believed in all of that. Once upon a time, he was the governor of a place called Massachusetts, and he said that those were all good things. And now he says, no, they're all bad things. Now, it doesn't seem like he's changed his mind. He just doesn't seem to say what he believes. I mean, another perfect example of that is this idea of everyone in the Republican Party just seems to be completely overwhelmed with this question of national debt. You know, there's problems with the government borrowing too much money, et cetera, et cetera. But the sad thing is at the same time that Mr. Romney is preaching about the evil of debt and how it's bad to borrow money that you can't pay back, he made most of Mitt Romney's money. He made his own money by forcing other people to borrow money that they could not pay back.
Oh,
and that's just wrong.
That's going to get into the whole pocket money conversation, isn't it? Can I have one final thing, Rob? In terms of foreign policy, because, of course, in terms of the American presidency, what American foreign policy has a massive impact on what the rest of the world, and particularly on Britain, as we seem to often join in alongside. How different would the world be if he was president come November?
Well, I think the world would be a little bit more nervous. If that were to happen. I mean, I think it would be a very sad result for the world. The fact of the matter is the reason that we are campaigning to re-elect President Obama is because he's already exercised a lot of very good leadership in foreign policy, and he's a guy who's done what he said he's going to do. You know, ended combat operations in Iraq and is drawing down troops in Afghanistan exactly the way he said he would. So he campaigned on it. He's done it. We expect him to continue to carry through on foreign policy in the same way. And what we saw when he visited here not very long ago is how important the special relationship between Britain and the U.S. continues to be. So those are just a few of the many reasons that I'm going to be voting for Barack Obama. And I hope that every other American listening to this will reach out and get their absentee ballot, their postal ballot, and return it. Exercise that constitutional right we still have even when we live here in Britain, and vote. Indeed, there are many Americans abroad, which is one of the reasons why, of course, Obama came here before he got elected in 2008, and indeed Mitt Romney has been here recently as well. Rob Carolina, Chair of the Democrats Abroad UK.